some of the modern houses I've seen in Japan, like, are just such high
Phenomenal.
quality. Yeah, like they're smaller than houses here, of course. That's due to preferences, but like the speed at which they can get them up, and lots of places in Japan have a right to build on your property, so they have really strong support of property rights. You can go there and you can have a house built within a couple of months from like buying a block to having it fully operational within a few months. Like, it's quite routine for bathrooms to be fully prefabricated. Like, they just build them in a factory and just whip them in, and they're wonderful. Like, the whole bathroom, you can wash in it. You know, you've seen it, how it works, and kitchens as well. And they're just amazing quality. And you just think, why can't we do that? Yeah.
There's an efficiency in Japan, and I mean, I'm biased because it feels like home to me, but everything's thought out, and everything has a purpose. And obviously in a city like Tokyo, which is insanely dense and insanely overpopulated, you have to be smart. And so, I'm not saying that the Japanese have the solutions to everything, but they also live within their means, and they don't go outside of what's necessary. Like, Japan's very utilitarian. There's not a whole lot of pizzazz when it comes to aesthetics. You go into a Japanese house and it's very like, this is where you wash up, this is where you cook, that's it, that's all you get. Whereas in Australia, we want the 900 mil stove, we want the cinema room, we want, the 2-car garage. And I just think that there needs to be some kind of, I'm kind of jumping all over the point, but if we're going to keep allowing more migration into the country, that's fine. I'm not anti-migration. I'm anti-mass migration, but that's a story for another day. But we need to start looking at, we have a huge resource of land, yet we all want to live on this one little patch, and therefore we're becoming denser. So if that's the case, if we all want to live in close proximity to our CBD or our regional centres, okay, well, we're not going to all be able to have the 4-bedroom house with the front yard and the backyard. And it seems to me that a lot of Australians still seem hell-bent on having that home that we grew up in the 80s and 90s or the 70s, where you did have the big front yard and the big backyard. That's sort of
not modern houses in Japan are very large, and they do have big front yards and backyards. Yeah. And like some of them are quite. One thing that is different, Carl's, in that very, very different between Japan and Australia, is that the transport system, in particular the train lines, the government doesn't run it. They're fully privatized. And that has a huge effect on property. Effectively, their train companies are real estate companies. They go out and buy some crappy low-value land. They build a train station, they build a train line, and then they make money by selling houses and shopping centres and everything around that new train station that just happens to be very high quality, and they make money doing that. And, but like, that's a whole other thing that's really complicated. But yeah.
Well, can I chime in on that? Because that's actually an idea that's been around since railroads began. And that's how a lot of the railroads across Canada were actually funded, was an enterprising person came along and said, hey, Canadian government, I can't remember their name, they were one of the early rail sort of tycoons, said, hey, Canadian government, I'll fund the railway myself, but you need to give me a 1 kilometre wide or 2 kilometre wide strip of land. I'm going to build the railway straight down the middle, and I'm going to sell these long, narrow blocks backing onto these farms, essentially backing onto the railroad. And the deal was, if you bought one of those blocks, then there was a certain way you had to do it, but the train would stop for you at your backyard, and you could get your goods, whatever you were growing, whatever you were producing and providing on your farm, you had train service to all the cities. And the train line was entirely built essentially off the capital increase in the value of the land from putting the train line through, all privately done, no public money. It was just simply an agreement that, hey, you can have this land as long as you build that railway. And these are some of the enterprising ideas. I know that there's talk of building a thing called the Iron Boomerang across the top of Australia. Looking at it, they've got a different model for that, but it's the same basic principle. We're just going to let private money fund this off the increase in value, off the economic value that is generated by the project itself. But here in Australia, we run straight back into that red tape problem.
We've done worse than that in Victoria. If you get property rezoned in Victoria, you now have a windfall gains tax where you have to pay a tax on the increased value due to rezoning of property that you own, which is sort of totally undermines that type of Japanese model that the train companies use. So,
yeah. Now, Carly, I'm mindful of the time.
Yes. David, it has been awesome having you on. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, and I'm very honoured to be your first guest. I didn't realise you hadn't had any guests before.
I totally blindsided Topher. I was like, nah, I'm getting David on, and here we are. So, yay.
No, look, I'm very glad you did, Carly, and excellent choice of guest. David, thank you for coming on. Thank you for being a good sport. Thank you for all that you do day in, day out, representing the people of Victoria. I was very pleased when you got returned to Parliament for another term, and obviously I'm hoping to see you there again. And look, I'm on the Libertarian Project. I'm publicly on the record as being pro-libertarian, and I'd love to see you being joined by a couple of colleagues at the next Victorian election. There was a question that was asked earlier that I thought, Carly, would be a great place to finish. I'm not going to go back into the comments and find it, but there was a comment asked earlier about how can people help you? How can people help the Libertarians? How can people get involved? What's involved? I know that a lot of people are becoming increasingly aware of the need to get involved. Australians have been famously disinterested in politics. People are finally realizing that's a terrible idea. So, David, how can people get involved, and what are the sorts of ways in which people can do that?
Yeah, there's lots of ways for people to get involved. If they're interested in the Libertarian Party, they can join the party, come along to a branch meeting. If they're not keen on doing that, even just like liking and sharing stuff on social media is something small that people can do. But, we're always willing to, have people come along and join in with things. We're getting really activated at the moment for the election next year. So, yeah, if you live in an area, find out where your local branch is, and you can just send me an email and I'll tell you how to get involved if you want to do that. And I look forward to meeting you and we always have fun.
That is true. Libertarian events are good. I think there's a Libertarian event coming up in Northern Victoria that involves, I think it's a shooting day at a clay shooting club or something like that. I've been asked to speak at it. I should probably know more about it than what I do. But yeah, Libertarians do know how to have fun.
David, just before you go, I'm going to talk about the petition very quickly. Guys, if you haven't yet, please sign our Castle Law petition. We're at, 16,500 now?
I haven't checked it recently, but
I do have it open, actually.
Let me tell you why this is important. Now, there's two stages to a petition. The first stage is to get past 10,000 signatures, which means it qualifies for debate. We've already achieved that. So well done to everyone that signed it, and well done to Carls for setting it up. But then there's the next stage where if you get significantly above that, then the government starts to sweat. And I would really love to see the government sweat more. If we can get, 20, 30,000 signatures, I think the government starts to worry at that point.
Yeah.
And you'll notice, Carly, can you drop that link? This petition is different to what I was asking for. I was asking for a review. I was playing nice. We're not playing nice anymore. We're demanding Castle Law.
So guys, I'd love to see you please sign that. I think most of you have, but if you haven't. And also, just so you guys know, correct me if I'm wrong, David, but everyone in the house can sign this, not just one per household. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. Yep. So you just need to be a Victorian. You just need to live in Victoria and have a real address. Parliament checks to make sure that it's a real address because, to prevent fraud and stuff like that, because it's an official document. But yeah, everyone in your house can sign it as long as you're a Victorian.
There's one thing I do want to point out. Sorry. One thing I really want to point out, because people get stuck on this bit here. I'm aware that once the petition is presented, it will be a permanent record of the Parliament, and the names and addresses of people who signed it will be public. This is terribly worded because people take it literally and think that if they sign this, it's going to make them a target of the government. So can you just speak to that, David?
Yeah, so when a petition is signed, it's not public as in put on a website or something. There's an office called the Public Records Office, and all public records go into the Public Records Office. And if someone wants to look at a record, they can go in there and they can sign a thing and then go and look at a document to make sure it's... The idea of that is to make sure so that citizens have the chance to ensure that actual public records are legitimate and that they're real and stuff like that. I think they have quite strict conditions on what you can use those things for. Like you can't just get it out and set up a mailing list or whatever. Yeah. It's actually quite an ordeal to go in there and go through all that stuff. But, it is technically a public record. It's stored in the Public Records Office and, people can go and do stuff with it, but like it has to be that way. Otherwise, people would question the integrity of the petition system if there was no way for anyone to check that it was legitimate or not.
Yeah. Now, can I speak to Catherine's question from earlier about do you have to be Victorian? To sign the Victorian one, absolutely. You have to be a resident in Victoria. However, there are equivalent petitions in Queensland and New South Wales that I know of, and there might be others elsewhere as well. So whatever state you're in, just do a quick Google Castle Law petition and then your state. And I know that will take you to the correct one in New South Wales and in Queensland. And if there are others in other states, I'm sure that'll work there as well.
All right, whoa. You mean to tell me you've watched all the way to this point, an entire segment of the Oddcast, and you're still not subscribed? Seriously, what is wrong with you? Just subscribe, like, share, tell everybody. You had fun, right? Tell everybody else. Let them have some fun too. And listen, buy me some coffee, please. I'm desperate. I'm starting to get the shakes. Like, just there's a coffee. That one. Scan that coffee, please, now. Thanks.